Well, many of you guys had it pretty close to being right with what your guesses were, but actually no one got it completely right. So it was the 5-bladed prop, it was the spinner, and also the governor. So there it is with the spinner sitting on it, and I think it looks awesome. And I got it done with everything just sort of matte black kind of look, or satin black. So anyway, I'll have more on that at the end of the video. You may remember from last time that we needed these extra full-length ribs for the elevator, so we have a left mold and a right mold for this particular rib, but we need 4 more of each. So Devin and Jeff have sort of been doing this basically one day at a time, because it takes a day to set those up because we're not using the oven or anything like that. So they're just slowly working through that amidst other things. So I'm finally able to get on to doing something other than sanding. So my goal now is to close up or seal up the different pass-throughs through the forward bulkhead there, including all the electrical things. Dan had done quite a lot of work there on getting those sorted out. And excuse the snow, this just dust in the air shows up in front of my camera when the flash is on. You can't actually see it with the naked eye. Anyway, so I'm starting out with closing up or putting in all the fittings there for these pass-throughs there for the avionics. Here's the first overhead panel there for the interior, just done in the foam. So Jeff and Devin are going to lay up some carbon over that and create that panel. And you can kind of see there's the left-hand side, or sorry, the right-hand side roof panel goes from the front of the cabin all the way to the back and around the back window. So they're starting out by laying some perforated film over that foam, same as what they did when they did the side door and other panels for the interior. And this just helps the carbon release from the foam when the part is all cured and not get stuck to it. So a little bit tedious to do this, but way less time than creating a full-on mold. And fast forward to the end where they've already laid up the 2 layers of carbon fiber and put the perf film over the top of that and breathe the fabric, and now they're in the process of vacuuming it all down. So this is really going to make a big difference. I think these roof panels are just going to clean up the interior of the roof and hide all that sort of rough carbon that we have there. And then back in the cabin, as you can see here now, I've got the first panel in there, and that's all been sort of test fitted, and had to drill some of the screw holes out there and just sort of finish that off, but now it's ready to actually be sealed in place with the RTV. And meanwhile, the other platform here for doing the other roof panel is getting underway on the machine, as you can see. And back in the cabin again, there you can see I've got that one in place, and all the connectors in there. So I've got antennas and regular pass-throughs and the brake lines, and also pitot and static lines. And then over here now I'm getting ready to seal in this power outlet there, or power pass-through. That's for the main 12 volts, and so just with some RTV around there to seal that in. And after I put that in, I added some more around the outside, because that's actually quite a decent hole there, but it fits nicely in there. So that's that one done. So I got the positive one done, and also the negative one just to the left of it, and then above that the air lines for the pressurization dump valve system, or outflow valve system. And then back on the machine now, started actually setting up the pass-through here for the elevator control. So this needed to be match drilled. And so it's the following day now, and you can see Jeff and Devin have taken the bag off of this roof panel, and that's looking pretty nice, but it still needs a little bit more time to cure up, because it hasn't been super hot in the shop. We're just keeping it about 67 degrees. And this is the other one now, ready to have the carbon laid up over that one. So that's what they're going to do. And this is the last of the trim panels now, so won't be any more foam going up on the machine that I can think of. And so this is that elevator pass-through control there, or actuator. So I'm just match drilling the end through to the rod, so I can put a bolt in there and lock it into place. And that's what it looks like with the hole drilled through. So I'll get a AN3 bolt through that, kind of just like that, and that helps lock it into place. And that lives up in the cabin, so one side in the cabin and the other side out in the forward area in front of the forward bulkhead. So basically just slide it in there, and it's a super snug fit because that has to be pressure tight. So it just fits in there sort of very smoothly. And then on the other side, I just have a little spacer there holding it off so it doesn't sort of move in or out. And then the actual other end there that I match drilled goes on the end. So there I got the spacer, put that on there, and then put the actual actuator on there, and with the bolt in there. And then we've got controls for running or actuating the elevator through the forward bulkhead now. So it just remains to have all the other linkages hooked up to that. Of course, I still got to get the finished hardware. The bolt that I put in there is a little bit too long, just the one I had lying around. And those red items there are just the brake reservoirs for the brakes, and they're just loosely mounted there right now, so that's why they're moving around. And another day and another set of ribs being laid up there by Devon. So I think this was the second last set that they had to do, or maybe the second last set. I think this was on Thursday. And here they are, just getting ready to bag, or in the process of bagging that second roof panel now. So that basically finishes off all the trim panels that we need, that I can at least think of. So that's a bit of a milestone. And back in the cabin now, I've moved on to the elevator torque tube, and you see I've got that in place, and that needed to actually be bedded in because it was a little bit, wasn't sitting just quite right. So that's underway right now. And this is the Autopilot servo for the elevator control. So I've just mounted that to its mounting bracket, or bolted that to its mounting bracket, getting ready to put that in. And I realized I needed another little addition there for the elevator torque tube, because I was going to try and merge the Autopilot one with the actual pass-through one, and it turns out I didn't have enough space for that, so I really need another way to connect to that torque tube. So I quickly pulled out some extra material and started cutting up the little bracket piece that I needed. And there it is there on the left hand side, and the little tube on the right hand side is what goes in the mill. And you've seen these before if you've been following along. So they just need to get cleaned up there, a little bit of sanding around the edges to take off the rough bits, and I can take that off to Brits for welding. And that's what it looks like when the sleeve's sort of pushed in there. So that becomes another way of connecting to the elevator torque tube that the Autopilot servo will hook up to, so it can change the pitch of the aircraft when it needs to. And so there's the other one. That was the one that is basically exactly the same. That's the one that connects to the pass-through going through into the forward nose area. And back in the cabin again, I'm sure you're going to get sick of me saying this, but I'll stick with it for a little while. There's the Autopilot servo mounted there, and so this is that first actuator, so that lives on that torque tube there, and then from there it'll connect up to that pass-through that I put in there that goes through the forward bulkhead, so that heads out to the elevator for actuating it. And then the new one that I created, which still needs to be welded and painted, that's going to live right about there, and that's going to have a little rod there with some rod ends on it, connecting to that actuator arm there on the Autopilot servo. And so that thing will move up and down, and that'll actuate the elevators for us. So that's how that all works. And Jeff and Devon got this one finished and bagged. So that's the last of the trim panels now. This is the one for the left-hand side roof panel, as I mentioned before. And it's taken a while for things to cure up because it's not super hot in the shop. As I said before, I think we're keeping it about 67, and we've got the fan running there pointing up in the air to keep circulating the air, so that's helping keep nice even temperature in the shop. And there's a bit of a close-up look at the other one there, still sort of curing a little bit before it can be trimmed around the edges. And meanwhile, Jeff's been getting some more stuff done there on the wing. So this is the cable there for the rudder actuation, and then there's the torque tubes mounted in there that you saw into the for the aileron control. But you can see the other little torque tube that I created there is connected to that now. So you push on one and it makes the other one move. So the next thing to do is get the aileron mounted on there, and we'll actually be able to move it using the rod. So that's kind of neat to see that coming along like that. And then around the back here in the winglets, getting close to getting the rudder one sorted out. That rod's just sort of sitting in the wrong direction. It actually needs to go through that spar there, but not too far away from having that done. But you see Jeff's put the ends on the cables and got a clamp in place there to hold the sleeve so it won't move. And now we're on to Friday morning, and Jeff and I quickly jumped on this project of getting the materials or the metal cut out for those Aileron spades that I showed you in the last video. So Jeff was cutting out the various different parts from the templates that I printed out, and I was drilling the holes in there and getting them cleaned up and ready for welding. So we got all that done, and I zipped up to Brits before lunch to drop that off, and also got him to weld up that little bracket for the elevator control. And so after lunch it was time to drill my torque tube out and get things already connected and bolted up to that and back in the cabin. So that's the first thing here, just drilling the first bracket, and there's it's been drilled there. That's one hooking up to the side stick, and now I'm aligning the second one, making sure they're both the same position, and getting ready to drill that. Now I've done that, and I'm moving on to the one that actuates the pass-through there, going through to the outside there, to the elevator. You see I marked them all when I had it in there. And here I'm drilling that one out and getting ready to move on to the next one. So there's, I think, 5 different things on there that I had to match drill. The Autopilot was the 4th one, and the 5th one was this little hook there that connects to the linear actuator that handles the trim of the elevator, because we just kind of use this spring, and I showed this a long time ago with this linear actuator that you'll see coming up in the next week or so. And meanwhile, Jeff's got this one sorted out. So this is one of the rudder push rods there. So now you can see he's got it drilled through there, and when you pull on the cable, it actuates that rod. So it's kind of moving in weird. And you can see it better if I do it that way. That's kind of how it works, through that sort of motion there. Yeah. So that's that one done now. And on the other side, he's got the other one going there. So all that's left to do there now is hook up the spring, the return spring for that, which I'll be picking up over the weekend, and then get the rudder mounted on there. And here Devon and I are in the cabin, and Devon's got this panel trimmed off now, pretty close to being trimmed. It still needs a little bit more on the back, but you can kind of see how that fits in the roof there. And if you've been or even if you look on the other side, you can see how much that cleans up that whole roof line, and this will get covered in ultra suede, and it's going to look awesome. So I'm really happy about how that turned out. And meanwhile, here's how things are looking there in the cabin now that I got the torque tube back in there with the actuator. So there's one of the stick actuators on there, and I got the one there going through the panel there, and then the one for the trim, and then I've got one of the side sticks in there, just test fitting that and getting the linkages sorted out there. And I still have to do a little bit more work on that, but basically I just got to create a little fork, because the one that I bought just wasn't quite right there. It's just too small. So I'm going to create my own little fork for that, and you'll see that next week. So for those of you playing my little game, this is what was in the box: the MTV5 of a 190 centimeter prop, which is 74.8 inches diameter, a spinner assembly, and the governor. So everybody had some of those bits and pieces, but nobody had it all completely right. And so anyway, as you can see there, all black and nice sort of satin matte finish on the scimitar blades there, which I think look awesome. And I didn't want to have any stripes or anything on there. I wanted just to keep it nice and clean and plain, and just looking just clean is the look that I was really going for. So pretty happy about that. And you'll get to see that governor is sitting in the box on the right hand side there, inside the main box, but you'll get to see that when I install that in the coming weeks. So, and there's the spinner sitting in the plastic wrap there, and that's what it looks like right there, so I'm pretty happy with how that came out. I think it's got the same type of sort of satin finish on it as what the blades do, and that's obviously composite as well, so yeah, pretty excited to see that arrive. And we actually got a sneak peek at our redrive too this week. That's getting close to being done, so we'll actually probably be picking that up next week and be able to put that together. So things are really starting to move along with the project. I'm pretty excited now to be actually installing stuff in the cabin, and Jeff's getting close to finishing stuff on the wings. So anyway, it's all moving along. It's just getting super exciting, so don't miss any episodes moving forward, otherwise you're really going to miss something. That's our update for this week, and thanks again for watching, and tune in again on Tuesday and see what we get up to in the first 2 days of next week.